know that, our bacteria produce something called psychobiotics, which are chemical messages to our brain. And we know bad bacteria, they want processed foods. They want sweet foods. They want that. Our good bacteria wants the vegetables. They want the prebiotics. They want all of that. So if we're kind of overwhelming our gut with those bad bugs, then not only is it that we want it naturally, but chemically our brain is being washed in these neurotransmitters to want it as well. So it's really just something that if you're doing that K through 12 and then you go and you be an adult, now you're really at a disservice when you're by yourself and you're making food choices. So seeing how things are happening in the beginning, obviously I'm just talking, and the best thing for me to do is start in my home and my family. So that's what I do my best. And those who are around me, I try to tactfully and lovingly maybe provide some recipes or food myself. But I would love to see at the kid level, so whether it's pre-K, it's daycare, just better food options so our children have a great start, so that when they're 18, 19, going to college, their normal is eating healthy, and they're just inclined to choose carrots over a bag of chips. And they may say, I don't know, I've just always eaten like this. I don't know, I just have always done that. Then, I think we'll have definitely a healthier population.
Yeah. Nothing in this podcast is intended to render legal, financial, medical, or other professional information. Because the details of your situation are fact-dependent, we highly encourage you to find a recommended individual that you can trust to give you the expertise that you need related to your situation. Good morning, DocPreneur Nation. You're listening to Concierge Medicine Today's DocPreneur Leadership Podcast. And today we have a special guest. We have Asher Allen. He is the functional medicine nutritionist consultant. Am I correct? I think I might have messed that title up, but a functional nutritional consultant. Did I get that right?
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah.
All right. So, Asher, thank you for being with us. You're with NutriDyn, and I caught you in between seminars, it looks like. So tell us a little bit about you and what you're doing at NutriDyn.
Yeah, so NutriDyn, I'll tell you a little bit about it. NutriDyn, sometimes it can seem like the new kids on the block, but it's really far from it. It was started in 1973. It was a Greg and Dave Peterson in Minneapolis, Minnesota. They actually started off as a chiropractic equipment company. And then they noticed that, hey, this supplements can really, really help. Well, they met an individual who was really, saying some things that seemed really far out at that time. And they said, you know what, we'll give this guy a chance. They put him on a stage. They let him share his research. He actually helped them to produce some of their first formulas. That guy ended up being Dr. Jeff Bland, who's considered the father of functional medicine. So when it comes to roots in functional nutrition and functional medicine, we definitely are one of the forerunners there in it. As far as me, when it comes to nutrition, my background is nutrition. I went to the University of Georgia, go Dogs, and then also currently finishing up my master's at the University of Bridgeport in human nutrition. And all of this is just further help my practitioners. And so I work with over 300 practitioners. I have the state of Georgia primarily, where we just tackle challenging patients. I get calls often where they say, hey, Asher, I have a patient with this, their labs aren't lining up. We're using these supplements, we're not getting the results we want, or we are getting the results we like. What should we do next? We really sit down and we game plan. My background is football, so we game plan, we come up with things that may or may not happen to make sure that we have a plan for that. I work one-on-one with them. I train their office managers, we train their staffs, so that they have a really, really fine-tuned SOP in their office so that they can rock and roll and get a lot of people help.
So what drew your interest as, being interested in nutrition, interested in what you're doing in NutriDyn, and, the functional medicine side? Because functional and lifestyle medicine and integrative medicine, that is a really emerging popular market, popular specialty, so to speak, for many patients. What drew your interest particularly to be like, yeah, I kind of want to work in this area because it's really fascinating?
Yeah, well, you know what? I think I'm from the South. I'm from Georgia, so growing up, we ate grits, bacon, eggs, and drank Dr. Pepper and things like that all day, every day at grandma's house. And so, but I remember when I was really, really young, my grandfather died, and he would drink probably a case of Pepsi a day, right? He didn't do any other drugs, but later on I found out that, what was in there may have been a little bit more addicting. Well, my dad, when that happened, he went on just a crave and just looking at what is up with the food, what is up with everything, because his father died unexpectedly when my dad was in his late 40s. And so we actually grew up in a home where people would probably, think that we were crazy. My dad was juicing, and when Whole Foods, before it got bought out, was just a, local place in Atlanta, he would go to these areas and made sure that we all ate healthy. I remember eating coconut oil and taking olive leaf extract in, middle school. And it's like, no, nobody wants to go to middle school with olive leaf extract breath. So, but,
Mm.
but then after that, I went to school. Obviously, with a background in football, my interest in nutrition at that time was really, I want to play football for a very, very long time. And I know this is important. I know I can't just exercise. What I put in my mouth is important, but I didn't really put it together. But once I got done with my career in football, I was really, really fortunate to meet NutriDyn. They actually provided one of their, and still our flagship formulas called NutriDyn Fruits and Greens, which is our antioxidant formula. They provided it to the club, and I remember taking it. And then afterwards, I was fortunate enough to get connected with the company, and they invited me, understanding my background in nutrition, they invited me to a seminar. And Michael, my first ever nutrition seminar, it was Dr. Jeff Bland and Dr. Robert Rakowski were the first two people. And my brain went, I
Yeah.
said, man, I thought I knew nutrition. You're following the food pyramid. You're doing all these things that most of us get through the media. And then I just said, wow. I didn't understand a thing like most people who hear Dr. Bland for the first time, but I knew that, hey, everything he's saying is making sense. The thing about
Yeah.
the thing about the brain being connected to it, the thing about our body being one, and it just made so much sense to me. So after I got done with that seminar, I said, "What's next? I love this, and this is exactly what I want to do." And so they gave me a little small territory in Southwest Minnesota, and then we were able to be there for a few years, and then we came out here to Georgia about 8 years later. And so we've been down here for about 4 years working with doctors.
Wow. And now you mentioned that you're working with about 300 doctors in the Georgia market. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
So, how has the response been among the different specialties to, I mean, obviously everybody, it's pretty easy to agree that yes, we need to stay active. We need to be proactive in our health. We need to, monitor I remember I was a speaker at one of our conferences a few years ago. He said, we've got to teach people how to read food labels, especially our kids. We're not doing enough. There's not enough education related to even just reading something as simple as a food label. And so a lot of people will agree and nod their heads. Of course, yes, we should do this. But what has been the clinical response or the healthcare professional response towards NutriDyn and the supplements and what you guys are talking about?
Well, I think one of the first things that I hear most often is that when they meet with NutriDyn and they integrate it into their practice, they say, you know what, Asher, this is what functional medicine used to be like.
Mm,
We're still family owned. We're a fourth generation family owned company. We're still private, which is really unique when it comes to supplement companies that are really, really big in the US. And as a global company, we are able to get so much information for so many people. But by far, what I hear more than anything is that, you know what, Asher, this is what it used to be like. We're kind of like, since we're speaking to a concierge audience, we're kind of like concierge reps. We come there, we don't have a time limit. We're not upselling. We're not saying, oh yeah, and by the way, if you bought this, you should. We're present. What do you need? We're working. One of our things that we want to bring is just value. What do you need? The greatest thing that you can call me or call one of our reps that we're an asset. That's one of the greatest compliments that you can give us is that we're actually bringing value to you. So, and then when it comes to our supplements, clearly, with our science team that we have and our years of making formulas. We're quadruple GMP certified, which means we spend a lot of money and we have a lot of certifications to be able to be a global company and to be able to keep our formulas clean. One of the most important things that we always say is that all of our kids take our formulas. And obviously, as parents, you inspect everything that goes into your children. And so we really want to make sure that we're doing what's best for our families, since we all, partake of our supplements due to the environment that we live in, and then also what's best for our practitioners. And it's really been a blast. But that's really what I hear back from them, Michael.
Well, that's great, and I want you to unpack in just a moment. So I'll get your mind turning of what does integration into a practice look like? How are the next steps? Like walk us through a story or a recent example of a new integration. But before, as you're thinking about that, I will say that, from my perspective as a patient and as a parent, when I think about traveling and I think about how difficult it is to keep your gut regulated when you're traveling, it's like as soon as you get on a plane, something happens, right? And I'm sure there's things that do. But then you get to the destination, and then, next thing you know, you're having stomach issues or whatever it is, intestinal issues. Um, and so it would be nice to kind of, when we're thinking about traveling with kids, even traveling ourselves as individuals, whether it's, just traveling to, something as simple as across town for the day that I'm going to be out of pocket and I don't know what the food situation is like or where I'm going to be at for lunch, or if I'm even going to get lunch today, or I'm traveling across the country or across the world, how can I maintain what I've been trying to do back at home, which is where all my resources are. So walk us through integration into a new practice. Why are they, what makes them, move forward to be like, yes, I have these types of patients and they would be perfect for working with y'all.
Well, first of all, what you said, firstly, is so true. That's one of the biggest issues that we find when it comes to traveling or any kind of switch in your life, whether it's moving, relationships, whatever the case may be. Our gut is usually one of the first things to get affected. So you're not the only one. But when it comes to integration, a lot of our practitioners, one of the things I always like to lead with mentally before I go into any office is that a confused mind always says no. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, if they're not educated, if they don't see the value, you might as well just go ahead and go around to the other place. Also, they want to have to work. They want to work with you. And so one of the first things that we always make sure that we do is we let people know that, hey, we're real people here. There's no screen in front of us. We're here really to work with you. Again, we use these formulas. We live this lifestyle, and we just really hope to help you replicate the model that we've seen work in other areas as well. So usually what we do is we come in, if they're a clinic that does not use nutrition, well, we start at the basics. There's no need for us to start big. So we usually start with something that I like to call the Fab Five, which is a probiotic, a multivitamin, a plant nutrient powder of some sort, a fish oil, and then also we're looking for, hold on, I said Fab Five, and I'm forgetting the fifth one. It's going to come up soon, but we like to start there at the basics, right? So I think vitamin D. I don't know if I said that, but we like to start there because regardless of what it is, if your patients do not have cellular membrane integrity and fluidity, that's where the omega-3s come in. And if they don't have proper vitamin D status, we heard so much about that during COVID, that if people's levels of vitamin D were over 40 and above, they lived longer than those who are underneath. So we understand that. And I'm just so thankful that lay individuals understand that as well. We understand the importance of probiotics in gut health. We know that we're more bacteria than we are human. So as long as we can have the proper ratio there, we're always going to be in a better situation than not. When it comes to plant nutrients, I don't know if you know that, but the top two, according to the USDA, vegetables that are eaten are tomatoes and potatoes. And that comes from fries and ketchup. So we try to increase the diversity of phytochemicals that come into each patient. So we have a formula that has 40 different non-GMO superfoods just for that phytochemical aspect and antioxidant component, because so many of us deal with oxidative stress on a daily basis. Then obviously a multi-mineral, multivitamin, we cannot do that enough. Recent studies have shown that only about 7% of soil is actually organic, actually has a mineral rich content because of the over farming or farming, whatever the case may be. So we know that food is not the same, right? It may look the same, but the content is not the same. And so when we take a look at all of these things, if your patient isn't really having those systems working accurately, before we add on anything else to that, we're really not doing a good service for them. So that's how we like to start off with practitioners who are completely new to nutrition, but they know they need to do it, or they're practitioners that do supplements at their home, but they don't do it for their patients. We usually like to start with the Fab Five. Then for those who are more advanced, much like your population, we just like to go to where they specialize, right? So are you more of a gastro? Are you more cardiovascular? Or are you cancer? Whatever the case may be, we want to meet you where you're at. And one of the first things I lead with is are there any gaps? No company makes everything. So are there any gaps that you're finding right now? Let's fill that gap and let's start that conversation from there. And then once they have a great experience from there, then they continue to grow from there. So it's not me, it's our science team. So we have 12 practitioners who are paid, and they're practicing physicians. So a lot of them are fellows at A4M, or adjuncts and professors and teachers for the Institute of Functional Medicine. And our chief science officer is Dr. Rick Mayfield, and he is the main auditor for the Institute of Functional Medicine. Also, he teaches the detox module for the Institute of Functional Medicine. Michael, I just say that because when we make a formula, we're not Googling, what are the top ingredients? These are practicing physicians that are leaders among leaders making our formulas. And so one of the first things our practitioners will see is that, wow, this really works. And it's because of our science team.
Wow. Well, in regulation around the supplements, we did a podcast on this couple of years ago, probably during the COVID kind of era. And just in discovery, it is one of those things. It is a little bit of the Wild West out there related to regulation, and knowing that there are physicians that serves as advisories and on the team is affirming. And again, this is not a paid promotion for NutriDyn, and nobody's getting paid to do this podcast today. We're just simply understand that nutrition is a part of our lives. It needs to be a bigger part of our lives. It needs to be a more focused part of our life. I know from personal experience, and I could not tell you what type of vitamins, minerals, supplements that my doctor put me on. But about maybe 10, 12 years ago, it's like the whole cellular side of my body just changed. And I went to an allergist and couldn't figure it out. And I went to my PCP and they couldn't figure it out. I was admitted to the emergency room twice, stayed overnight, and eventually someone said, you really should check out this physician. This physician, I think, was in Roswell, Georgia. And after urinalysis, tons of blood tests and urinalysis tests and so on. And I was getting hives every single day for probably 2 years. And you know how itchy the hives can be. And then I remember coming home. I'd never had allergies before in my life, other than maybe dust or pollen. And eventually I came home one night, ate one piece of cheese pizza, and my eyes just blew up, and I was like, I've eaten pizza my whole life. What's going on? And so eventually got turned on to a physician in the Roswell area. And I was taking 18 Benadryl, 2 Zyrtex, 2 Allerclears every day, and then going home and taking the shower knob off and just turning it on scalding, and then just kind of scalding the histamines out of off of my skin all over. And it was for about 2 years. And within probably 3 months of kind of re-regulating my gut and my nutrition, and I wasn't eating terribly. I was normal, everyday American food, unfortunately. Or, I wasn't it wasn't eating McDonald's and Mountain Dews every meal by any means. Um, but within 3 months, I was off all of that. And it was due to, and again, this is not a promotion, but it was due to the supplements and the nutrition and just an entirely different way of kind of resetting whatever was happening in my body. And so I think that the where we go with nutrition in the future, in our schools and in our doctors' offices, and having better and more informed conversations with our doctors, because I can tell you, even having a great doctor, it I do not talk about, and he does not talk enough about nutrition in our exam room meetings. And I have a great physician. I think he's wonderful. And we talk about all kinds of stuff. But nutrition is not really something of like, okay, you getting enough vegetables? What's your serving size is of this? And okay, well, don't eat that. Like come cake in moderation. But so anyway, we can see that there is value there. Anything you want to riff on related to that?
Well, I think you're spot on. The conversation around nutrition. What's so funny is that we've grown up in this allopathic mindset where we need instant gratification, right? Videos are 10 seconds long. We need drugs that work yesterday. So nutrition kind of gets put in the backseat because it's the low and slow play. It is a lifestyle, and unfortunately, we've been conditioned to want things instantly. But when you talked about how, hey, I've always eaten cheese pizza, now I blow up. It's something that our body, you know, uh, I often use this illustration sometimes. If you walk into your house and if you're married and you don't hug your spouse, yeah, you may be able to do that once or twice, but eventually they're going to say, hey, what's going on? And
Mhm.
so eating cheese pizza, eating, food that is genetically modified, sprayed with pesticides or whatever the case may be, your body may let you do it for a while, but once you wear it down, it's going to say, hey, what's going on? And that
Yeah,
hey, what's going on may be hives. It may be
yeah.
swelling, it may be brain fog. It may be dysbiosis, it may be diarrhea, it may be whatever the case may be. And so the conversation, you're 100% right, is it starts with the gut and the gut begins in the mouth. That's one of the things I really appreciate about your conference and how the oral microbiome and oral health was really pioneered there. And so wherever you go, if the practitioner is speaking to you about gut health and doing your DNA and wanting a stool sample and looking at your labs and then giving you something lifestyle related that can help you, you're in the right place.
Well, the conversation around nutrition and how you're working with the different doctors' offices right now, when you come in and introduce NutriDyn to the doctor says, "Okay, I'm in. Like I get it. I need to put my patients onto a pathway and give them some lanterns along the way to pick up that will help move them in the right direction nutritionally." Does this require of those patients or of the doctor to say, look, we need to change your whole diet? I'm sure for some patients, maybe there is, like, dude, we gotta talk. Like, if you don't change Mountain Dew and cheese pizza, something's gonna, and I love Mountain Dew, but
Yeah.
I don't not drink it as much as I used to. But nonetheless, using it as an example, does this require a whole change of a doctor's patient panel of their diet, or how does it get discussed and implemented in a doctor's office? Do you go in and train the staff on what this is about, or does the doctor kind of like, I kind of know how this works because I'm a doc?
Yeah, great question, Michael. The first thing that has to change is the lead practitioner's mindset because it'll trickle down from there. If the practitioner is on the fence, everybody's on the fence. The office manager kind of doesn't understand how the practitioner is going to react to a case. I would say this: my top clinics, from the top practitioner all the way to the front desk, it is organized. They know exactly what they're doing. Their SOPs are so well organized that they understand if I have a patient coming in with fibromyalgia, they not only know the modalities, they know the meal plan that they're going to put them on, they know the supplements that they're going to put them on. And really, when the practitioner sees them, he's going to look at that 20% where he needs to bring in his specialty. But 80% of it is already known. When they're doing their review of who they're going to see the next day, the day before, they already know, okay, I'm going to do this with them. I'm going to do this with them. And as long as their office manager and their nurse practitioners and their front desk is on the same page, the doctor is going to love it. What I find is that when there's a disconnect in that chain, um, people are going to fall back to what they've always done. It's just behavior. Coming in and doing something new, they're not going to want to do. So I would say, I know this may not be the answer that you were looking for, but it really starts for the patient with the doctor, because a patient will walk into the room and instantly feel the energy of the practitioner. If he's on the
Mhm.
fence, well, you know what, I'll do it next time, and I'll just. But if the practitioner says, Michael, this is what we're going to do. You're going to be doing this. We're going to take this. I'm going to see you in 30 days.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I want to press on two things that I find that I think are interesting, especially for physicians who are, business leaders in their practice. So that you're the physician CEO or you're one of the leaders in the group practice. You don't have to be in concierge medicine, or you could just be in general practice listening to this. But I want to talk about the fixed mindset of, why they would say no to, some of these ideas, some of these conversations around nutrition. Is it just because they're busy? And then the second one I want to talk about is the disconnect between like the docs on board, but the staff around them says, like, well, that's a good idea, but we don't have time for that here. And how do you, overcome those challenges? So fixed mindset and staffing challenges. I'll let you riff on those.
Yeah. Well, and it's a real thing. Busy. These practitioners are not just seeing patients; they're running businesses. They're doing payroll. They're doing taxes. They're making rent, and interest rates are going up. There's a lot of things that they're doing. So that the idea of bringing on a new line of supplements, which to some can be like a new language. Imagine going from English to Mandarin. I mean, it's like that for them sometimes. And so they are busy. They are busy, and that's why sometimes no one can do this by themselves. So I will say another trait that I see in some of my top clinics that do amazing. They have an amazing office manager, and I know staffing at this time is so tough. I can't tell you how many practitioners give me a call and they just say, Asher, I can't keep nobody. I spend so much time training them, and then they get up and they leave, or they get up and they use me as a launching pad. So I definitely empathize with that. And then you wonder, hey, is it even worth pouring into this next person that I'm going to be seeing? So I definitely see that as a real issue. But again, the reason why we all got into this profession is to see people live happier and healthier lives. And so we know that by implementing the strategies that we're going to be bringing into your clinic, that's what's going to happen. And I know a lot of practitioners that they're able to make that happen. And then your second one, I'm sorry if you could just remind me.
Staffing challenges and fixed mindsets.
Yeah, staffing challenges. So yeah, I think that's a really big issue, and I think I kind of touched on that
Yeah.
unknowingly. But I do think that some of my offices, when I go in there, I usually meet with a practitioner once every 4 weeks, and sometimes I'm met with a new person every time, and I'm like, wow, that's tough. And I can just, from their standpoint as a business owner, how many times am I going to train somebody? How many times am I going to do this? And then the worst can be sometimes you go into an office and you see the practitioner welcoming you, and you're like, wow, this is this is a challenge. You should not be in the front handling phone calls, then going to the back and all of that stuff. And we're all human. We all have
And
a life.
every office is different. You never know what you're going to expect. You never know what you're going to get when you walk into a particular office, and I had a struggle with my son. He broke his arm maybe a week after you and I were together at the conference. And I walked in the second time to our follow-up visit with the ortho, and the office staff was incredibly unfriendly. Like, just did they you could like they didn't want to be doing their job that day. And then we didn't even have a but I was grateful later on when I'm kneecap to kneecap with the doctor and the PA that yes, we're having a conversation around nutrition, around what supplements does he need to start taking in order to increase his bone health and his bone density. And so, because that's something that we all need to be aware of. Our guest today is Asher Allen. He's a functional nutritionist consultant with NutriDyn. We'll put all the links to how you can get connected with Asher and learn more about NutriDyn. Before I move into some of the more, other things that you're working on, two things. How do I, if I'm a physician listening and I want to read more about what NutriDyn is all about, the clinical research studies, maybe some published pages, published studies, look at who the advisory boards are of the physicians, where, what, who, what's my next couple of steps to learn more first before I take the next step?
Yeah, well, I would say the easiest is our website. If you go to NutriDyn.com, from there you can go to the About section. You can see about our history. Then you can also, under the About section, you can see our science team, right? So for many of our practitioners, they'll be familiar with these individuals that they see that are taking the lead at NutriDyn. And then when it comes to the formulas, implementation, protocols, the programs that we have for our practitioners, now that's where your consultant comes in. His job is to distill over 200 formulas and over 200 protocols for what you need. He's kind of like the real estate agent for you, right? He's going to help you to all those Zillow searches and all that stuff. He's going to tell you, what do you need? Okay, let me get you that. And let me show you. And on top of that, what I've seen in clinics to be most useful. And that's really the value. You don't want to be reinventing the wheel in your office. Your patients don't have the time for that. So we bring the value of saying, hey, listen, I work with over an X amount of practitioners, and we've done these protocols for decades. And some of these have newer formulas, but the protocols are, and the principle are similar. This is what I've found, and we see a lot of benefit from that. So feel free to reach out to me, Asher, at NutriDyn. That's NutriDyn.com. I know this information will be provided, but feel free to reach out to me personally, or if you go to NutriDyn.com, their practitioners can set up their doctor account, and then from there they'll be able to order our formulas. They'll get in contact with their consultant that, much like myself, are highly trained, been with the company for decades, and looking forward to help them.
And for physicians listening, I think that I always say, I'm not a physician, but I am a patient. And so I do know what it's like to sit on the other side of the exam room from you. And with that point of view, that perspective in mind as a patient and as an interviewer here, I think years ago, a few years, not, it was, you never know what you post on social media, what's going to take off, when you market stuff and post little vignettes. But one of the things was interesting. I was in a large big box store in the supplement aisle, and we as patients have no idea what we're buying, what we're taking. It is, the retail, there is a whole marketing, influential strategy behind end caps, things that are put on the end of the aisle versus what's in the middle of the aisle, what's moved forward through the aisle. And we as patients have no idea. So your patients are going to these stores, small stores, big stores, and usually not having any type of education as to what they're buying. They just know that, oh yeah, my sister-in-law told me I should take, or my mother-in-law or my wife, got these vitamin C's and all these types of things. And protein, I mean, how many times have we heard about protein? It's really been in the news and in, fad diets and so on this last year. Are we getting enough? And then you have protein supplements when you walk into the stores, you got protein shakes, and we don't know as patients, we're not educated on what this stuff is. And so it takes our physician to get involved, ask the questions like, hey, what supplements are you taking? And what I loved about my very first intake visit with my doctor years ago was he said, bring it all. Like, if you got a drawer full of that stuff, bring it all. I want to see everything that you're on, everything that you're taking, include the protein powders in the big jars and all this kind of stuff. And so you all have a lot of education, and you've been doing this for over 4 decades. NutriDyn has really been educating the healthcare industry about the effects of nutrition-based interventions. Y'all host workshops, conferences globally, seminars. In fact, I think you were just saying before we started here, you're at one. Um, Talk to us a little bit about how doctors can get involved in some of those educational events. And do you have to be already part of NutriDyn to be a part of that? Or how does that work?
Yeah, yeah. I would say this, just to kind of piggyback off what you said as well. I mean, that could be a whole podcast. Being in the supplement world, from sourcing to manufacturing to bottling to testing to QA/QC to providing it for practitioners, for it to be going into the patient's hands, getting test results. We've literally seen the whole spectrum of that, and you all would be amazed to see what is allowed on the shelves in this country. So that's why, and I won't talk too much about it, but one of the things that I always say as a rule of thumb is just make sure the supplement company that you're using is global.
Mm,
Are they global? First thing I would ask. So
yeah.
XYZ company comes into your office. Yeah, are you global? And the reason why I say that is because, as we know, markets like Canada, markets like Australia, extremely challenging to get American formulas or American product into it. Australia won't even accept American water. I mean, it's literally, they're so strict, or more strict compared to American standards. So I'll just leave it at that. That's always a good question to ask people. And if they're a young company, well, then that would make sense. But if it's easy to make a supplement company in America, I'll just leave it at that. Now,
Sure. Yeah. No, that's good information, and thank you for sharing that. How would doctors get involved in some of those educational workshops,
so,
conferences?
so by the time this comes on, we should be having. I know we have an event March 7th and 8th. We have a Dr. Scott Bergman that's coming from Walnut Creek, California. He's going to be talking about connective tissue and the interstitium. He calls it the hidden organ that no one's talking about. Really fascinating talk that he's going to talk about. Then we're also going to have Dr. Christy Hughes, who actually with Jeff Bland, we're one of the pioneers in starting the Institute of Functional Medicine. She'll be in Atlanta May 9th and May 10th going over immune health and women's health. And again, all of this information, NutriDyn.com. If you go to the education tab, you'll see that. But again, I'm a real person. I'm a human. You have my email address. You'll have my cell phone number in the notes from this podcast and from this video. Give me a text, or have your office manager, have one of your staff give me a text and just say, "Hey, I heard that Asher guy from NutriDyn. I want to let's have them in for a lunch and learn, or let's have them in for something, and we'll go forward." But the main way, I have a Facebook page as well. We have over 200 doctors that are on that Facebook page that are here in Georgia, and I do a good job of just communicating through that. So if you type in Asher Allen NutriDyn in Facebook, my Facebook group will come in. Make sure you let me know that you're a doctor, and I'll allow you in that group. So I definitely do a good job of communicating that way. And then obviously, when I get your information, you'll be on my email list, where I'll share information that's local and also in the Americas as well.
Awesome. And appreciate all of that. Our guest today is Asher Allen. He is with NutriDyn. He's a functional nutritional consultant, and I wish every doctor's office, had a better focus. If there's a challenge or a takeaway today, besides connecting and learning more about NutriDyn and Asher and the nutritional conversation around that, I think that one other takeaway is that we need to have more informed, longer conversations between patient and physician about nutrition, not just what did you eat, why are you here? More, even in the concierge doctor's offices, that can be a challenge, and I've even seen as of late, which kind of pivots into our next conversation as we coming in for a landing here, is what the future of healthcare is going to look like from a nutritional perspective, and why that's going to be so important for our kids, and why that's, what do we need to be challenging the healthcare community with? Because again, the biggest challenge I find in
moving good ideas forward in healthcare, regardless of if you're already at a busy hospital or and you say, well, I've only got 7 minutes, or you're in a private practice and you got all the time of the day, and in fact, you're looking for patients. Regardless of where you're, whatever position you're at, nutrition is something we need to talk more about. What does that look like in the future? Um, but I forgot my train of thought related to that. But let's go ahead and answer that question. From your perspective, putting on a parent hat or a dad hat or a patient hat, where do you want healthcare to be in the near future that doctors, I remember what it was, that doctors aren't saying, you know what, or administrators or whoever they might be, staff. You know what, that's a really good topic. That's a really good idea, but we just don't have time for that here. And that's the status quo that patients are so tired of. But yet, if you were to say, if you were to envision your patients walking into any store and being like, sure, I'll buy that. Has a nice label on it, and then they're putting these things into their bodies, you have, and you wonder, why do they keep coming back? Well, they're not coming back just because of your friendly personality. Usually it's because something's wrong, and we got to have a better conversation around nutrition. So talk to us a little bit about what you envision the future to be, what encourages you.
Yeah. Well, I think, and I'm gonna put on my parent hat. My daughter is 6, son will be 4 next month, and so I definitely have had the opportunity, to be in functional medicine for a while, but understanding, Dr. Michael Stone, he's one of our science team members. He makes a lot of our pediatric formulas, and he's always taught us that the first 1,000 days of a baby's life is so important for laying the foundation for the gut microbiome and just making sure that we have just proper nutrition in our body. I think when you see that, let me see how I can say this. I'll just say it. Well, you see what's being fed to our children is
Oh,
really a
yeah.
recipe for disaster. And we see children, especially female, children, they're advancing way too fast hormonally. We know the connection between arsenic. We know the connection between mercury and heavy metals and estrogen metabolism and increasing estrogen-like activity, so that you see young children that are maturing way too fast. You're also seeing that the gut, we know that it makes 70 to 80% of our neurotransmitters, including the ability to focus, which is dopamine. And so you think about it, when you've given someone an onslaught of dopamine killing compounds like artificial flavors and artificial sweeteners and genetically modified foods that are destroying that whole activity of making those good neurotransmitters. And then we wonder why Johnny can't focus. And it's really like, wow, we're not going to have this conversation. We know why he's not focusing, or at least can we rule out one of the reasons why he's not focusing? Can we just know for sure that he's eating a clean diet? And we understand, what they're fed and taste, and sometimes they're picky eaters. So sometimes we have a struggle. So there's definitely no judgment, but I would definitely love to see in the future, because I'm wearing this hat right now, of just seeing at the school system level, just better choices for our children, and not giving them the option to choose poor foods, because we know that our bacteria produce something called psychobiotics, which are chemical messengers to our brain. And we know bad bacteria, they want processed foods. They want sweet foods. They want that. Our good bacteria wants the vegetables. They want the prebiotics. They want all of that. So if we're kind of overwhelming our gut with those bad bugs, then not only is it that we want it naturally, but chemically our brain is being washed in these neurotransmitters to want it as well. So it's really just something that if you're doing that K through 12 and then you go and you be an adult, now you're really at a disservice when you're by yourself and you're making food choices. So seeing how things are happening in the beginning, obviously I'm just talking, and the best thing for me to do is start in my home and my family. So that's what I do my best. And those who are around me, I try to tactfully and lovingly maybe provide some recipes or food myself. But I would love to see at the kid level, so whether it's pre-K, it's daycare, just better food options so our children have a great start so that when they're 18, 19, going to college, um, their normal is eating healthy and they're just inclined to choose carrots over a bag of chips. And they may say, I don't know, I've just always eaten like this.
Mhm.
I don't know, I just have always done that. Then, I think we'll have definitely a healthier population.
Yeah. Well, and you've been in your history, in your background, you've been a elite level professional athlete. What were some of the challenges you found personally from a nutritional perspective that were like, hey, I wish this, in hindsight's always 2020. I wish this would have been more available to me. And maybe I wish that, you know, I was I was involved in this, and that really was what taught me about nutrition. Um, so I'll just let you riff on that a little bit.
Sure. You know what? I'm glad you brought that up because that gets to humble me. I was one of the worst eaters playing. And again, it's because it's what's available. And as a youth, you think, well, not, you don't think you can, right? You can play a high functioning, high level sport like football. And I played cornerback. So you had to be able to run a 4-3 forwards, backwards, and side to side. And you're doing all of that with, pizza and ice cream in your stomach, right?
Mm.
And so you think about that conversation, even with those elite athletes, are not there. I would love to see just something as simple as omega threes. When we think about a contact sport or any sport, inflammation and managing and modulating inflammation is the reason why LeBron James and Tom Brady can play for 2 decades. They use these modalities and they take their nutrition so seriously. We know that every time someone has a concussion, not only do they interfere with their blood-brain barrier, they also interfere with their gut barrier. Because what you do to your brain, you do to your gut, and what you do to your gut, you do to your brain. So a lot of times, athletes will have diarrhea, right? So you may see them after a concussion go behind the tent, or they may go inside because they have really bad diarrhea. And how
Mm.
do you respond to that? Well, unfortunately, it's drugs, things like that continue that cascade. So there's so many things nutritionally, and again, even if it's just that Fab Five that I talked about earlier, that would really help people to play longer. Owners would get more out of their athletes, and ultimately, families would have healthier mommies and daddies coming back from work. So I definitely, it's a story that needs to continue to be unraveled. I think there's plenty of it going around, but much like with the late population and athletes, it's just a matter of implementing.
Wow. Well, and doctors know now that us as patients, we are their patients, that we have access to so much more information. And we are so much more informed about things. And there's so much more influence from outside sources, both good and bad, about different, all kinds of different things, whether it's, drink more water, or whatever it might be, that we're pushed on, products are pushed on us all the time. And it would be nice if more and more physicians out there would have these types of nutritional conversations and just take the small step of asking. And if you want to learn more about Asher, about functional nutritional um, advice, about what they're involved in, about what they have to offer as NutriDyn, please come talk to Asher. We'll put the links in how to contact Asher in the show notes below. Last couple of questions. You can be however brief or long-winded as you would like to be on these.
We're having a great time.
Um, First is, what book do you hand out the most or give away the most, or what book was the one that you last read that, and again, it could be pleasure reading, it could be professional. We put together a list of, uh, books for doctors, and some of them are, I was just talking to somebody yesterday. I was like, I love the Jack Reacher novels. In fact, not just because of the TV show. I got into all the other novels that haven't been done.
Great question. I'm looking at my Audible list right now. So I would say, you know what? I would say one book that I read recently. I'm a big fan of Chris Voss. He was a former FBI interrogation, hostage interrogation negotiator, and he talks about the power of words. And so,
Mm.
a few examples are, When you're asked questions, always use what and how, and using the late night radio DJ voice. And so when you're talking to people and there's something really serious, make sure you end with a down inflection and things like that. So him, and then also there was another book by Charles Duhigg called Super Communicators. That's another book that I've read recently, and all of them are just about the power that we have and how we speak. One of the quotations was that only 7% of communication is the actual words that come out. And this guy was having, I mean, he would have families in the room with him, and their son is, in the Middle East, in hostage situation, and they're told they have 10 minutes or they're going to do something. So he has to speak in those situations, and the key things that he talks about when you come to civilian and normal lifestyle, it can only help us to try our best to communicate that way. So he's really big on mirroring and rephrasing and labeling and these different skills that helps people keep their lives. But then even when we're talking about practitioners, if you can help your patient see it in a different way, and you mirror it to them, then it can help them to do things. But yeah, one of my biggest things, you never use why, because it puts people on alarm. So what and how. So that was one of my biggest takeaways from the book.
And it's funny. Well, I look at the list of 50 books, and most of those 50 are, when we interview physicians as well, and wait, what book did you last read, or give away the most, and so many of those are what physicians have on their nightstand or their Audible list. Uh, and most of them have nothing to do with healthcare. They were like, I learned a lot. I'm still learning. I go to my continuing ed, but I'm learning to be a better communicator. I'm learning to be a better, CEO, so to speak, leader in my practice. How to, why bookkeeping and accounting and what the difference is, and why I need to know more about, HR and all these types of things. And so it's encouraging to know that there are physicians that, and if you haven't looked at some of these communication books, we'll put some of these ones as well in the show notes below. But another one would be, the power of customer service. Every doctor is in the customer service business, even though that fixed mindset of, well, the patient isn't called a customer, the patient is a patient because they're a patient. Well, we get that. However, the patient is a customer and they vote with their feet. And there's a reason that they're not coming back, returning for more, because they didn't find a remarkable experience worth remarking about to others, which is why you don't have good word of mouth marketing in your local community. And simply relying on a managed care directory or a PPO or HMO directory to be in is no longer going to cut it. Patients want more of you, and your voice, your opinion as a physician, whether it's about nutrition or whether it's about an encouraging word, 5 words from you mean more than 50 words about you. And we always say around here, it is no longer about being the best doctor in the world anymore. It is about being the best doctor for the world and for your patients and for your local community. Our second to last question is related to some of your personal passion projects that you're involved in. You're a leader in the community, that you're in the athletic community. You're a leader there at NutriDyn. What are some of your passion projects that you're a part of that really kind of amp you up in the morning?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think first, the family, the children, whether I have a choice or not. So every morning, just really pouring into our kids every single morning, Ari and Pierce, and just making sure that they have a good breakfast before they go to school, and a good thought. They don't do journaling yet, but we try to have good affirmations every single morning before we send them to school, and hopefully they can continue that. Another passion product is, so we have a initiative in a company. It's called RARE, stands for Real Athletes in Real Estate. And so what it is a group of athletes. Financial literacy in the athletic community is much like good nutrition advice to the layperson, right? It's very, very similar. There's quite a disconnect, And so our goal is, and what we've been able to do We train athletes when they get done, or even now, so they can get paid so early with the NIL. So they can get paid in high school now, they can get paid in college. Well, what do you
Mm.
do with that money, right? Monday through Friday, I'm on the field practicing. I'm not taking MBA courses and I'm not doing any of that. And on Saturday, when I'm supposed to be cram studying, I'm getting ready for, Alabama. I'm getting ready for Tennessee. So we don't have as many reps. And so what we do is we give them a class that they're able to learn the basics of financial principles, where they can apply that to real estate, they can apply it to venture capital, they can apply it to private equity, or any kind of endeavors that they want to be able to do. And then they have the opportunity to invest with us through our LLC that we have. And we do different ventures, whether it's debt deals, real estate, where they can kind of see from the background. And our ultimate goal is to equip them and empower them to do this on their own. But we also have a vehicle from which they can deploy capital into. And I'm not the only one. There's so many of us who have played that see that there's 18, 19-year-olds getting paid $75,000 from their local oil change place now,
Mhm.
because legislation has allowed it so that high schoolers are getting paid. And as you've seen, no doubt, college players are getting paid millions. And if a 37-year-old or a 40-year-old doesn't know what to do with money, you can possibly conclude, I don't want to assume, but you could possibly conclude that an 18-year-old may not know how to make the best choices with a couple $1,000,000. So we're just trying to give them a community from which they can come to. We speak your language, we know what you're going through, and we just want to help you. So that's called RARE. You can go on LinkedIn and type in real athletes in real estate. You'll see that group. We have a great community here in Atlanta and throughout that helps us. We'll actually be at the Super Bowl, so we'll be speaking to a group of athletes there as well. So yeah, and I always try my best to mix in some nutrition when they don't throw tomatoes at me for it.
Mhm.
And,
Well, that's
but,
such a, like we talked about off air, that is such a, you know, it there is a I don't want to tell somebody that I'm hurt kind of mentality in sports, that because I'll get cut or I won't, the those types of things. And so, there are things that we kind of hide from our doctor, or we just don't tell them until later, and then it's kind of too late, and nutrition is such an easy thing to discuss with anybody. I mean, my mother-in-law loves to talk about nutrition, and I find some of her insights very fascinating. And we've tried to make adjustments, just small, tiny adjustments in our own family. And, that's what it takes. And I think it was Susan Greeley. She's a nutritionist as well with Castle Connolly Private Health Partners. And I remember listening to a podcast of hers and her talking about it just takes small changes. Small little changes can turn into larger habits. And so talking about nutrition with your patients, talking about nutrition with Asher over here at NutriDyn. Our guest today has been Asher Allen. Before we leave you, we have one final question for you. And I've asked this of all of our guests, but this one, the theme this year, I think we're looking around or circling around is we're glad you did, or you're so glad that you did. What's one thing that in looking back in your career, personally, professionally, now at NutriDyn, what's one thing that you're so glad you did?
that I listened to my parents and got mentors and unapologetically bothered them. So I mean, I am so honored to say that when it comes to the nutrition world, I have been able to spend time, learn from, be on Zoom calls, be at seminars with, Dr. Jeff Bland, whose mentor was Linus Pauling. And then you go down from Dr. Jeff Bland, you have Dr. Robert Silverman, you have Christy Hughes, you have Rick Mayfield, you have Robert Rakowski, and then down to that next tier, you have practitioners like Dr. Drew Rosenberg and Charles Sepchek. And then you think about those in Kyle Fogel. You have guys like that. And then you have this little pipsqueak from Atlanta, Asher, who is able to talk to them at any time, text them at any time, go over challenges with them, talk about life, talk about family relationships with these individuals. And I'm so glad I did that because it's made me the person I am today.
Wow. Well, thank you for your time and thank you for sharing that. I know for me personally, I feel the same way about many of the concierge doctors as well. Every time I talk to one who's he's always bouncing between Los Angeles and New York City. And, he always asks about my mom, because he met my mom a couple different times over the years. And, you know, he and I haven't connected in a couple of years, but hey, whenever we do, it's, hey, how's your mom too? How's she doing? And we're able to catch up and commiserate and share fun stories and challenges and how we overcome them together. So I love that he has a heart as well for nutrition and having a more informed conversation with patients as you do and with physicians. And he's always challenging them related to nutrition, but he's also, has a heart for, which is interesting. Every doctor's different, right? Every practice is different. You ask them who your ideal patient is. And, this particular physician, he just loves he has a heart for the sandwich generation patient. He's like, I know you got pressure caring for loved ones who are older and their stress and anxiety and nutrition needs and conversations around health that need to occur for that. Our guest today has been Asher Allen with NutriDyn. We're going to put all the links on how to connect and contact Asher, learn more about what NutriDyn is doing. Just go take the next step, learn more, learn something new every single day is what my dad, I think, says. You can put it on your resume. He's a farmer up in Canada, and he always says, hey, come help me with this. You can put it on your resume. So I love that. And Asher, thank you for being our guest today.
Oh, thank you so much, Michael. Thank you for everybody listening, and go dogs.